Hi, welcome to Keith and I Don't Tread on Anyone. Today we have a great guest, one of my favorite channels on YouTube. It's called The Great Work. You can tune in for videos on men, women, humanity, free speech, philosophy, education, politics, entertainment, self-improvement, truth, and psychology. Today we have the host of that channel, Western Highlander. He has 16.9 million views on his channel. Wes, how are you?
Great, great. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. How did you get into finding the videos of Mark Passio, Stefan Molyneux, David Icke? What got you into those, and what motivated you to make a channel out of those guys?
Well, I got into the truth community, if you want to call it that, in the early 2011. I just had been fired from a job. I was working a summer job as a cook in Mykonos, you know, the Greek island. And I was fired after 3 months. And it was early August. I had nothing to do, so I got into the internet. You know, I wasn't a technology guy at all. I didn't even have a cell phone. So I got into the internet, and I stumbled upon Alex Jones. And at the time in Greece, the big thing was the Zeitgeist movies and the Zeitgeist movement. So I saw a video of Alex Jones saying that the Zeitgeist movie was promoting Marxism. And it was a video with him and G. Edward Griffith. And when my friends told me to watch the Zeitgeist movie, something was off about it. I couldn't articulate my thoughts, but emotionally, when I was watching it, something was off about it. My instincts were screaming about the movies. Something was telling me something is wrong. And it was about the bubble cities, as Peter Joseph was calling them. These bubble cities where there is a central control, where everybody has to rent car from the state in every city, where you have to wear the same clothes, and all this type technological Marxism kind of shit. So my alarm bells were going off, but I couldn't articulate why I thought the zeitgeist was weird, was bad. I couldn't articulate it, but my instincts were telling me that it was bad because it was centralized, it was central control, there wasn't any individuality as in these robot cities, whatever you want to call them, that the Venus Project was promoting at the time. I didn't like it, but I couldn't understand why. It was just instinct. So I saw this clip from Alex Jones and G. Edward Griffin talking about how the Zeitgeist movies were promoting technological Marxism. And in my head, something clicked. I say, yes, that's it. This centralized control shit never works. Central banking never works. Federal governments never work. Everything that is about centralized control doesn't work. So I got into Alex Jones in early 2011 when I saw that. And then as I was watching Alex Jones, he invited people like Stefan Molyneux, like David Icke, like Mike Cernovich. And then through David Icke, I was watching a video of David Icke, and then the suggested videos beside the video of David Icke, it was natural law. That's how I got into Mark Passio, through his video of natural law, as I was watching David Icke. And then it was like a snowball rolling downhill. I watched more and more of his videos. I respected most of his views. You know, for example, Mark Passio is pro-resource-based economy. I'm not. You know, we disagree on some issues, but 90% of the things Mark Passio says, I think they are spot on. So, you know, and I don't do it. I created this channel because it's good for the soul. It's good to articulate your thoughts. It's good to promote things that are beneficial for society. I believe in karma. if I put enough good things out there, good things will come back to me, in a sense. You know what I mean? That's why I created the channel, and I thought to myself, as I was watching Stefan Molyneux videos or hearing Mark Passion podcast, I thought, you know, if I hear this 2-hour podcast, there are 10 minutes or 15 minutes within that podcast that are a solid gold. And that's that you can extract a principle from. So I thought people would like if I would listen 2 hours of Stefan Molyneux, and then I could provide a 10-minute clip of the central principle from that podcast for people to listen to. Because not anybody can concentrate and listen to 3 hours Molyneux continually. You know what I mean? But everybody can listen to 10 minutes. Everybody can listen to 15-minute clips.
Sure. Yeah, you know, I remember I was on Stefan Molyneux's show twice, and the first time was a long, long time ago. So I don't think you've put that one up. But the second time I was on, I'm like, God, it'd be so cool if the great work, you know, put up a clip of that stuff, and you put up the entire video. The one that him and I did was called America's Foreign Policy of Destruction, and you put it all up under a different name so we could, you know, attract more people. I just remember that being so cool. Now, about the Zeitgeist movement, I was watching Peter Joseph talk to Governor Jesse Ventura, and you know, he was giving all his zeitgeist ideas of sort of like exploitation, and I'm like, what is it that I can't stand about this zeitgeist movement? And then Jesse Ventura says, "So, Peter, what's the solution?" And Peter responds with, "Well, you know, we already have a lot of taxes that we can work with through state, local governments in order to start this endeavor." And I'm like, "Oh my God, that's it! He's a commie." Like literally, he has no problem violating the non-aggression principle. His stuff on 9/11 was terrific. His stuff on history in part 3 of the Zeitgeist movie was very good, very informative, a lot of problem, reaction, solution stuff. But when he said the problem is we need to get into the government and change the government, doesn't care about the non-aggression principle or morality, I'm like, you son of a bitch, you had me fooled.
Yes, and even if you can't articulate it, why it's wrong at the beginning, because I was young when I heard that. I was around 20 years old, 21. I don't. Now I'm 28. What was 10 years ago? I was 19, 18. So when I first heard it, it sounded good. It had all the music behind it, the soundtracks. But something about it, it set your instincts off. This centralized control scheme. If you have any instinct for self-preservation, you know it doesn't work. Centralizing control of whatever is it, even if it's state control, even if it's money through the banking system. Centralizing control and removing free market agency out of it, it never works. It never works.
One of my favorite things about the Trump administration is that I really got into politics in like 2010. I was 14 at the time, and I kept on arguing with leftists on principles, on history and stuff. After leaving the left, I supported Obama in 2008. Um, and I just couldn't get them onto my side. And with the Trump presidency, it's like they're finally getting skeptical of a large centralized government. Again, for all the wrong reasons, but at least we're finally getting them to do something. So I asked them, I said, hey, the left says corporations and business are more dangerous, and the state is there to help us. Why weren't you guys afraid of Donald Trump as a businessman? If business is bad and government is good, why did it take till Trump got into government for you to stop liking him? And the obvious reality is that government is 1,000,000,000 times more dangerous than business. Businesses do not have armies. Businesses cannot make laws. If you don't work with them, they really don't affect you for the most part. So this is such an opportunity for the left to wake up to reality, but it doesn't seem like they're doing it. And that's why I love when you retweet Roy Moore videos from like a month ago. pushing the fake news media out of their chair of legitimacy?
Yes, for me, I was always from a little kid. My father was very anti-government, but he had a government job, so I came up from hypocrisy. My father was extremely extremely anti-government, but he had a government job. So that so when I was 13, I told him, "Why do you rail against the government and getting paid by them at the same time? That's wrong." So he tried to beat me. Of course, it didn't work because I was boxing when I was a kid. But I remember I always had that instinct about being with the underdog, if you want to call it that. So when I was seeing all this stuff with the pro-government people, with the socialists, because Greece, where I'm from, everybody's a socialist. When I saw that, when I saw the Zeitgeist movement, how all the kids were promoting and were happy with it, the natural contrarian within me always assumed that if everybody likes something, it must be wrong. If everybody likes the government, it must be wrong. If everybody likes socialism, it must be wrong. If everybody likes the Zeitgeist movement, it must be wrong. Because most people are not thinking, they just agree with a dominant opinion within the culture. So if everyone thinks something is good, I automatically think this must be bad. I need to figure out why. And for me, that's where you have to start. And that's why I gave up on anarchism in a small way. I said to myself, okay, I am an anarchist, but if we don't stop this immigration shit in Europe, we're going to be an Islamic bloc, essentially. A complete Islamic takeover is going to happen in my own country if I don't stop this. That's why I started supporting political parties or political leaders or political movements like populism, like nationalism, like Trump. Because if you don't stop immigration, your country has no future. Fuck anarchism. Nobody's going to be talking about anarchism if we are an Islamic nation. Nobody's going to care. First, you have to establish a smaller government where it allows for conversation before you start talking about anarchism. If you have a big government, a welfare state, a full-blown open borders immigration, and you keep talking about anarchism, it's like talking to the wall. There is no point. Nobody's listening to you. If you have no economic freedom as a country, you can't preach ideas if everyone is starving to death. I can go to Venezuela and say, you know, guys, it would be great if we were all anarchists, and they are eating pigeons and rats in the streets. Who's gonna listen to me? First, you have to have a small government to allow for the conversation and free market of ideas to take place before anarchy takes real root in a country. First, small government has to exist. Because if you have big government and there are no jobs, there is no middle class, nobody cares what you think about your ideas. Everybody's trying to survive. They're too busy trying to survive to listen to any logic, to any ideas. First, you have to have a small government to allow us to pitch our ideas. That's why I got into politics about last year. I was never into politics. I have never voted. I'm 28. I had the chance to vote 4 times. I never voted for president in my own country because I didn't care. They were all socialists. What is there to vote for? But yes, continue.
Oh, I was just going to ask you, why is capitalism superior to socialism morally and economically?
Well, it's not exactly about capitalism versus socialism. It's about individualism versus collectivism. It's the individual versus the group. Now, the individual has a consciousness. I myself have a consciousness. I have my own mind. I can decide what I think is right or wrong. But the group has no consciousness. It's just mob mentality, mob rule. when a lot of people get together, you get this gathering of aggression where there is zero critical thought going on. That's why, for example, I like something that G.L.W. Griffith says. He says, there is no forest. There is just a collection of trees.
Yes, definitely.
There is no group. There is just a collection of individuals. So, in a sense, there is no such thing as collectivism. There is no such thing as socialism. It's a delusion. There is only the individual. And when a lot of individuals with their own kind of thought get together, they create ideologies like socialism, like collectivism. But it doesn't really exist. It's just individual gathered under mob rule and destroying other people's lives. Basically, there is only the individual, nothing else. That's why capitalism works, because it's dependent on the effort of the individual. In a pure capitalism free market, if you work hard, if you have a good set of skills as an individual, you're going to succeed.
Well,
and let me give you an example. In socialism, in Greece, everybody's hiring their cousins, their fathers, their daughters, no matter the skill. So if someone is a mayor, they're going to hire in positions of power their cousins, their friends. So it's not a meritocracy. It's not dependent on skill. It's about hiring your friends and your relatives. That's why the economy is collapsing. But in capitalism, where there's no coercion, everybody is hired based on their merit, based on their own skills, based on their ability and their hard work. That's why it works, because it's based on merit.
And also, even if you don't have a lot of skills in capitalism, you tend to be in a pool of people that create a lot of good services and a lot of good products. You also have people competing to make those products and services at the lowest cost available to the most amount of people. So it's not just the smart people work hard and capitalism's good for them. It's even the poorest people who know the least amount of stuff. Just look at the life of a cashier or the life of a teacher. You cannot have this if the state controls the factors of production. The average teacher nowadays has a car. The average cashier has air conditioning. The average janitor has CDs and music and television and a computer where you can get all the access in the world. They have a cell phone where they can basically talk to anyone on the planet who has another one of these. Cell phones are getting cheaper. All books are getting more available. Knowledge is better. So even for the poorest and the least skilled in society, capitalism and individualism are still principles people need to embrace at a much better level. I had a great talk about this. I was at a Turning Point USA convention, or was this? Yeah, it was Turning Point USA, where Charlie Kirk is the head of it, and they gave me this free poster. I just wanted to give them a plug because I had had a terrific time. Why do you know why all of Michael Tessarion stuff was taken off YouTube?
Yes, he sent me an email and said, if you don't privatize or remove my stuff, I'm gonna give you a strike. And I didn't do it because I thought it was fake at the beginning. I said to myself, there is no way Michael Tessarion is gonna want to take all his stuff out of YouTube. I thought the email was fake, and I didn't take any of his stuff out of my YouTube. And he gave me 2 strikes on my channel, so I privatized all his stuff. But he sent me an email and asked me to remove his stuff from my channel.
I cannot believe he did that because I've only gotten 2 strikes on my channel, and they were both Michael Tessarion videos. And actually, I think they were your videos. One of them was Michael Tessarion on Afghanistan and Iraq casualties, and I forget what the other one was. But I cannot believe he sent you that email. That is so disappointing.
Yeah, I thought it was fucking crazy. I thought it was a false email. I don't think it was him. So in the beginning, I said, there's no fucking way it's his email. So I didn't privatize any of his videos, banned the strike games. So I was surprised, completely surprised. But what can you do if it's his decision? They're his videos. He made them. I don't have any right to post them if he doesn't want them to be posted. So I privatized them. I said, fuck. But it's his decision. I think he wanted to go to a new direction with a new podcast. I don't know. I don't know what he did, why he did it. It was crazy.
That is so. Do you think there's any chance it wasn't him and that it was just an agent of his? Or was it definitely him?
You know, I have no clue, man. I have no clue. I just, I don't dwell on these things. I moved on immediately. I said, okay, that happened. There's nothing I can do about it. Let's move on. So I started uploading Jordan Peterson videos to my other channel. The Enslaved Being channel, I have the other channel. It was completely based on Michael Susano. That's how I wanted to start. The Great Work was about only having Mark Pasio videos, and the other channel was all about having Michael Susano videos. Because before I was obsessed with Stefan Molyneux and started uploading his videos as well. But at the beginning, it was meant to be only Mark Pasio videos on one channel and only Michael Susano videos on the other channel. That's the mindset I started the channels with. So I was very disappointed when Michael Susano told me you can't upload my channels. Honestly, I had cropped, I had edited hundreds of audio videos of his that I hadn't uploaded yet. Hundreds that I hadn't uploaded yet. It took me weeks and weeks to make those videos, and I couldn't upload them. I was so disappointed. But when things like that happen, you have to move on. I don't dwell on it. You know, I said the fact and I moved on.
Good for you, and that's why Pete's channel is so productive. You got to check it out. I have a link to his channel below. Definitely also follow him at The Great Work. Pete, what is the problem with feminism? Isn't it just about equal rights for women?
There is not. This is going to be surprising for me to say this, but there is nothing wrong with feminism unless you combine feminism with the government. That's the problem. As I think Stefan Molyneux calls it, Marxism with teeth. That's what he calls feminism. So the problem is that the feminists use the government to achieve all these retarded objectives they have. It's all, for me, I don't care what your ideology is. I honestly don't care. As long as you don't use the government to achieve it. That's all that matters to me. As long as you don't use the government to achieve your ideologies, your ideology doesn't matter. If it's a good idea, it will succeed in the free market. If it's a bad idea, it will fail. The only thing that matters is that you don't use the government to achieve it. That's the only thing that matters.
Now, Pete, why is the left trying to support immigrants? I know that there's a great Ayn Rand quote where she said, if the statists really cared about poor people, they wouldn't just talk about it. They would support capitalism, which has made poor people richer than most kings and queens in all of history. Why is the left supporting immigrants and bring them into America and bringing Muslims into places like Europe? What's that agenda?
Yeah, I think almost every human being has the instinct of wanting to be the hero, of wanting to be the man to save us all, the hero complex, as I call it. Everybody has it on a small extent. But with Christianity, that sense of wanting to be a hero, of wanting to help other people, of wanting to save them, was fulfilled through boots on the ground, through missionary work, through going door to door, preaching the Bible. The left's virtue signaling is an easy way to be a hero without having to put any work in. I just have to write a retarded tweet on Twitter. I just have to repeat the establishment's talking points about the living refugees. I just have to virtue signal. I don't have to do anything. I just have to say the right things the establishment tells me to say, and I'm going to be a hero. Everybody's going to love me. It's an easy way virtue signaling, what the left does, is an easy way to be portrayed as a hero without having to do anything. I just have to send the right tweet, the right virtue signaling tweet, like J.K. Rowling does, and everybody's gonna love me. It's just an easy way to be the hero without having to do anything.
It's so sad that people value saying the right thing more than even critically thinking about the right thing. I mean, if you don't support free markets, you support something that's immoral, the initiation of aggression, and you support systems that have turned Venezuela into places like they were. You see Jeremy Corbyn in the early 2000s next to the Venezuelan flag chanting about how great Hugo Chavez is, and now he's completely silent. Or he's not silent. I wish he'd be fucking silent for 5 minutes. Instead, he's trying to implement those policies in Britain today. These people are just unbelievable. They're never even sorry. I mean, Molyneux put up a video yesterday about postmodernism, and he goes, after communism killed 100 million people in the 20th century, they're still not sorry.
And it wasn't even 100 million, it was 250. It's called democide. It was 250, not 100. But let me give you an example from my life. When I was a kid, I started working as a cook when I was 16. You know, I wasn't good at school. I was terrible, actually, but I was expelled when I was 16 from high school. I didn't even finish school. So when I was 16, I started going to school because I just wasn't good at it. You know, I just couldn't apply, couldn't read. I just didn't like it at all. So I started working as a cook when I was 16. And from my first 8 jobs, from the age of 16 to the age of 32, I was fired from my first 8 jobs. And instead of blaming myself, because I was completely undisciplined, I didn't like taking orders. I didn't like having a boss. I didn't like going along with people. So instead of blaming myself for being antisocial in a sense, because as a kid I was very antisocial, I blamed my employers. So I was getting fired from job after job after job. And then I started reading books about mindset and about how to control your emotions. That's why I love Chernobyl. I started feeling like this was my problem. I had to fix it. And I stopped getting fired immediately. I haven't gotten fired since I was 22. It was the last time I got fired because I realized it was my problem to fix. Now take that attitude to the leftists. Imagine if you are a 45-year-old academic and you have supported socialism for your entire life, and socialism has destroyed millions and millions and millions of lives. Imagine taking that in, absorbing that, saying to yourself, this ideology has ruined people's lives and I have supported it. A strong person to do that, to admit to yourself that you have supported evil. It takes a very strong person to admit that to themselves. So for me, it's not surprising. Imagine supporting communism and having evidence after evidence tells you this is murder, this is genocide, this is starvation, this is disaster. Evidence after evidence. What does it take to admit? It takes a very strong man to admit to themselves, I supported that. I'm a fucking bastard. I am complicit in that murder. I'm complicit in the murder of communism because I supported the ideology and I propagated it. It takes a very strong person to come back from that. I'm not surprised the leftists are fucking insane. The more you support faulty ideologies, the more you are proven wrong, and you keep going with the bad decisions you make. The most crazy you get. You know, I saw a tweet by Owen Benjamin, the comedian. Do you know him?
Yeah.
Yes. He was talking about Patton Oswalt. And he said, in 2014, Patton Oswalt was very funny. He was a very free market guy. If you were offensive, he would tell you, great job, buddy, I love that job. Even if it was very offensive for the politically correct standards. And he said in his tweet, he said, forward that 3 years later, now he's a complete communist, a politically correct shit. He criticizes even the smallest jobs because the bad decisions, the acceptance of bad ideologies within yourself accumulates over time. The more you accept your own bad decisions, the worse the person you become. That's why these leftists go crazy. They see the results of communism and they still call themselves communists. That's why the only feminists that are left today, think of that. 20 years ago, 60% of women would say, I'm a feminist. And as evidence of the retardedness of feminism kept coming forward, women start calling themselves feminists. So after 20 years, after all this evidence that feminism is fucking insane, the only women that still admit that they are feminists are fucking insane with blue hair, pussy rings, So if your ideology is proven crazy and you don't reject it, you become crazier than the ideology itself over time. That's why the only feminists left now are insane. Because there is all this proof that feminism is insane, that if you are still a feminist, you must be even more insane yourself.
What if you could recommend 3 books for all people to read, what 3 books would they be?
Well, the first book I ever read voluntarily that I wanted to read was the Da Vinci's Code when I was 20 years old. Then I have read about 80 books my whole life because I never read as a kid. I never read it because school was so horrible. I thought reading was horrible. So I started reading by myself when I was around 20 years old, for 8 years now. And let me tell you, if I read for 30 minutes, I have a headache because I'm not used to it. I'm not used to focusing like that. So so every book I read, it has to mean something. It has to be good because it's not easy for me to read.
And
So
that's why I asked this question, just because there's so many books that unless I get, someone that I really respect, like you, like Mance Raider, who I had on a couple weeks ago, like Patrick McFarland from Liberty Weekly, if I get their stamp of approval on some books, I will read them and I will promote them. So, okay, and what are 2 others you think are mandatory reading?
no, you shouldn't look at Da Vinci's Code. It's not good. I'm just saying it was the first book I ever read.
Oh, okay.
Have you read the Most Dangerous Superstition by Lark and Rose?
Yes, I have.
And the other book is Persuasion. Persuasion, όχι Persuasion, Persuasion. That's definitely must read. And Mike Cernovic's Gorilla Mindset. Those are the 3 100% books you have to read. And I would suggest an audiobook, but for me it was too horrible to read. It was a great book, but the experience was horrible. I first heard it on Stefan Molyneux's channel, and the audiobook was called The History of Child Abuse, something like that. In Stefan Molyneux's channel, he has a 10-hour audiobook about the history of child abuse and how it creates wars, how child abuse leads to wars. It's in Stefan Molyneux's channel. It's about a 10-hour audiobook. It's awesome, but it's very difficult to listen to. Very difficult, very emotional audiobook. This is definitely must listen to. How child abuse leads to war.
Yeah, that is actually one that's been recommended to me a number of times. I was skimming through the Most Dangerous Superstition just to find a quote that I loved, and I just can't pick one out, but I do mean to do a video on this book. It's so good. I met Larkin Rose in person at a Candles in the Dark event where he spends 2 days teaching you how to talk to statists, and it was so great. If that event comes to any of my viewer cities, it is definitely worth. I think it's $115. He promises to give you your money back. If you don't like it, we had 3 statists come in and just answer questions for 15 minutes, and Larkin gave them $50 each. And one of the guys emailed him the next day and said, "Hey, give me some more information on this stuff. I might be an anarchist."
That's great. That's awesome.
It was really good. Pete, what was the most important thing you learned from watching Mark Passio's work?
Gun ownership. That's the thing that was never in my mind before Mark Passio. I didn't.
What was it?
Gun ownership, Second Amendment.
Yes.
Because I'm European, I'm from Greece. I never had the idea of gun ownership and self-defense was never in my head before I listened to Mark Passio. It was never an issue. Nobody discussed guns where I'm from. Nobody talked about guns. Nobody discussed having a Second Amendment or anything like that. So it waked me up in the principle of self-defense, which is as important as the non-aggression principle. Self-defense. That's the thing that, yeah.
Well, I talk to a lot of people on the right, and they spend a lot of time, talking about the gun facts and the gun killings, and yes, America has a very high crime rate compared to other countries, but it's in places like Chicago and Detroit and Atlanta, and those are the places with the toughest gun control. But my 5 seconds on gun control when I talk to people, I look at them and I just say, what weapons does the government have the right to have a monopoly on? And if someone else has those guns, how do you confiscate it from them? And then you have to get them to admit that they believe in the government monopolizing guns. The government, who's responsible for most all genocides in history, the government that has a 6% approval rating in America, that's who they want to have a monopoly on the guns. You're insane if you believe in any form of gun control. You're absolutely insane.
Let me give you an example. I live in the third biggest city in Greece, and there are only 2 gun stores in my city. And I live in the third biggest city in Greece, and there are only 2 small gun stores in my city. 2 small gun stores in the third biggest city in Greece. And I went there, and they tell me to give you a gun, you have to send a letter to the government to allow you for a permit. And the guy was an old friend of mine. He was 2 years older in school when we were in the same school together. And he told me, if you write on the paper that you want a gun for self-defense, they're not going to give you a permit. You have to write down that it's for hunting. That's the only time they allow you to get a permit. Of course, they ask you, why do you want a gun? Why do you want a gun in the permit? But if you write for self-defense, I'm never going to give you a gun. They are never going to allow you to buy a gun. So the guy told me, write for hunting down, they're going to give you. So say if someone comes in your house to rob you and you shoot him, you have to say in the court, the gun wasn't for self-defense, but since the guy came to rob me and the gun was there, I had to shoot him to protect myself. So you can't even give the self-defense. You can't even claim self-defense in court because no one gives you a license for self-defense.
Gun ownership is of vital importance, absolutely. And Alex Jones's interview with Piers Morgan on CNN, I watched it again. It's years old, but I watched it again, not remembering it at all. And the points he makes are so important that Alex Jones really is not a laughing matter. If you haven't seen Alex Jones's video Terror Storm, The second you're done watching all of my videos and Pete's videos, you gotta watch that video. I'm kidding, of course, but Terror Storm is so important. It is a very concise history of false flags and government lies. Now, I was watching Brendan O'Neill on Dave Rubin the other day, and it made me realize the importance of free speech simply because governments and leftist mobs who are non-state agents, those people hate free speech so much that that's when you realize how important it is. He was talking about people in the Warsaw ghettos. He was talking about how governments like Chairman Mao, Joseph Stalin, obviously the Nazis are always an easy example. He was talking about how those groups always try to take away freedom of speech because they realize how important that it is. And when he, got into that stuff, it just showed me First Amendment and Second Amendment. It makes perfect sense that those things were the two most important that the American founding fathers put in their documents. You have to be able to say what you want so people can think what they want, and you have to have the ability to forcibly defend yourself. Sargon of Akkad was talking with Six Hex and Hammer 666, and Sargon, of all his advice, he said, "Sticks, if there's one thing, do not let them implement any hate speech laws," which I thought was an interesting take. Pete, what is the most important thing you learned from watching Michael Tessarion's work?
Let me say something about Brandon O'Neill first, and we can get into that. The irony about Brandon O'Neill is that he's not pro-private property rights because he's a communist, a Marxist. So he's not pro-private property rights. And if you think about it, the idea of free speech came out of private property rights because private property means you own your body, which means you own the fruit of your labor. And speech is part of your body. So that's where the concept of free speech came from, out of property rights. And he doesn't believe in property rights because he's a communist, he's a Marxist. So that's an irony there that he hasn't seen yet. That's why I think all these ideologies, communism, are rooted in emotional issues. Because it's not, the guy has an IQ, Brendan O'Neill, off the charts IQ. He must be insane intelligent. And he's still a communist. So that tells you that all these ideologies are rooted in emotional issues, in childhood issues. So that's a separate issue. Let's talk about Michael Tessarion. What did you ask me about Michael? What did I learn?
Yeah, what was the most important thing you learned from watching all Michael Tessarion's work?
For me, the best thing I've learned is self-reflection. And you can tell that because of the phrases he says that have stuck in my head. For me, one phrase Michael Tessarion said that has stuck in my head is, you can't clear a window with a dirty rag. That's the phrase that has stuck in my head the most out of all his lectures. Because it tells you, unless you have a clean mind, a clean state of mind, unless you are at peace inside, you can't go out there and fix the world. Unless you have fixed yourself first. That's the thing I have learned from Michael Tessarion, self-reflection.
What is the most important thing you've learned from Jordan Peterson's work?
I like Peterson a lot, but the best lectures I think he has are the ones where he ties the psychology he's trying to theorize or explain, he ties it to something, to the concept. For example, when he takes philosophical ideas and he ties them to a Disney movie, to Pinocchio, to Geppetto, to The Lion King. That's the lectures I like the most because I can visualize his ideas that way. when he talks in a concept for 2.5 hours, purely in a in conceptual terms, he's purely theorizing. It's difficult to follow, and it's difficult for something to stay with you if it's all theory. You have to tie it to a concept. So I like his videos a lot where he takes philosophical concepts and he ties them with a story. That's what I like to watch from Peterson. And for me, Peterson, the core of his work is allowing atheists to realize the importance of religion. That just because you reject religion as a concept, it doesn't mean that your mind doesn't have a need for religious stories and a religious concept and believing in something higher than yourself to be a moral being. You can't just believe that you are a Superman and be moral. You have to believe that there is something bigger than yourself in order to guide you as a moral principle. And that used to be God. We used to say, we follow God, we go to heaven, all this stuff. It was a nice way to guide us to moral principles. But if you remove God, you remove that essence, that need human beings have to believe in something higher than themselves.
What was the most important thing you learned from watching David Icke's work?
Let me get a glass of water first.
Okay, take your time. Hey, while Pete is getting a glass of water, here is a quote that I picked out in The Most Dangerous Superstition. If human beings are so careless, stupid, and malicious that they cannot be trusted to do the right thing on their own, how would the situation be improved by taking a subset of those very same careless, stupid, malicious human beings and giving them societal permission to forcibly control all the others? Folks, this book debunks the legitimacy of government in every way possible. You got to read that, and I'm glad Pete reminded me of it. Pete, what's the most important thing you learned from David Icke?
Yes, 1 minute. All right. The favorite part of David Icke, I would say the holographic universe stuff. That was my favorite of all of David Icke's work, the holographic universe. Because for me, it explains so many things.
Yeah, you can definitely find the holographic universe video from David Icke on the Great Work channel. What about Mike Cernovich and Stefan Molyneux? What is the most important thing you've learned from those two guys?
I'm going to say something about David Icke first. Let me say something and we'll continue. The holographic universe help me understand the as above, so below principle that Mike Passio teaches you in a more extensive approach. But the fact that in a hologram, in the piece of the whole hologram, you get the whole hologram itself. That principle for me, that the universe operates similarly to the human consciousness, is very important. That's okay. Let's talk about Mike Cernovich. Self-talk. I have to say, my favorite part about Cernovich's book is the chapter on self-talk, because I am an introvert. So for me, what works best for me when I have bad emotions, bad feelings, is talking to myself. I can't fix my emotions by talking to other people. It just doesn't work for me. You know, I barely talk about feelings and stuff like that with my girlfriend because it just doesn't work. It doesn't do anything for me. I'm more of an introvert guy. So the part of Cernovich's book that talked about self-talk and talking to yourself like you are another person, talking to yourself like you are talking to a good friend. You wouldn't say to your best friend if he made a mistake, "You fucking piece of shit. You made a mistake. What's wrong with you? what the hell is wrong with you? You never make mistakes. Why are you so stupid that you make the same mistakes again and again? You wouldn't talk to your best friend like that. And so why are you talking to yourself like that when you make a mistake? That's the best part of Chernovych's book that I love. He teaches you to talk to yourself like you would talk to your best friend. That's what helped me the most in my life of all these other people.
That is so interesting. It's so simple and so easy. What a great point. What is the most important thing you learned from watching Stefan Molyneux's work?
Stefan Molyneux. Female liver. Exposing female liver. Because everybody in our society wants to bash men, to talk about how bad men are, how terrible men are. But female liver always slides by. Nobody notices, nobody talks about it. So the thing I loved about Molyneux the most is that he talked about how evil single mothers are, how bad dumping your kids in daycare is as a mother. So he talked about female evil. And as a kid, everybody thought my father was an asshole. You know, he was very aggressive, he was verbally abusive. So everybody was an asshole. Everybody thought he was an asshole. Nobody liked him, essentially. But my mother, on the other hand, always played the victim, never took responsibility for anything. But no one thought in my childhood that anything was wrong with my mother. They thought she was an angel. Even though for me it was terrible because no matter what she did, she never took responsibility. She always played the victim, which is how my sister behaves now. So for me, it always bothered me that people never thought about women doing nasty shit. So that's what I liked about Molyneux the most.
That's great. And finally, the last thing I want to ask you is, what have you? What's the most important thing you've learned from watching Alex Jones's work? You had a great video on Alex Jones and and Pedogate, the pedophile elite, not to be confused with Pizzagate for the 300th time. So that's definitely a video I'd recommend to go find on Pete's channel, The Great Work on YouTube. What's the most important thing you've learned from Alex Jones?
I think the importance of aggression. It's very important in life to be aggressive, to go after what you want. I hate people who are these beta male, passive aggressive bitches. I hate men who behave like manipulative women. You know, that's why I hate men who are raised by single mothers. I just fucking hate them to my bones. I just can't stand them because they're so passive aggressive, they are so slimy, they are so manipulative. I despise them. So for me, it was refreshing to listen to an aggressive man like Alex Jones. He knows what he knows who his enemies are, he knows what he wants, he knows what he's after, and he's been aggressive about it, like men should be. We shouldn't be passive bitches and let people use us and let people take advantage of us and let people manipulate us. We should be aggressive. We should go after what we want. And that's what I always loved about Alex Jones.
That's a great answer. Again, if you want to follow Pete's work, he's also known as Western Highlander. Follow him on Twitter at The Great Work 3. Follow his YouTube channel, The Great Work. Again, he's got 16.9 million views. Congrats on that. And I just want to end by one more quote from The Most Dangerous Superstition. Here is something I'd love to tell the Richard Dawkins and the Sam Harrises of the world, who are members of the cult of statism. But what most Western atheists fail to realize, despite the clear evidence staring them in the face, is that they are members of the most destructive church in history, the Church of Government, which has managed to wreak havoc, death, and destruction on a level far beyond what even the most vicious churches of the past did. And that's why this is a great book. That's why I'm so glad Pete brought this up. I need to do more work regarding this book. Pete, thank you so much for your time. Is there any last words you want to give us? Any last pieces of wisdom, of advice you want to give people at the Don't Tread on Me, on the Don't Tread on Anyone channel?
Yes, advice. My advice is mainly on men. I would say, don't have long-term relationships with people you don't like. So my philosophy in life is I turn people over very quickly, like a high customer restaurant. If a restaurant, I was working in a restaurant in Mykonos that served 1,000 people every day. So every 20 minutes, we would turn tables over. So after 20 minutes, we would tell the customers, we're going to turn the table, it's time to leave, but more politely. So that's how I treat people in my personal life. If I am not compatible with people, I turn them over, I turn them loose, I turn them away. I don't stay with people who don't fit my mindset because it's a waste of time and it brings you down. It's like people who constantly bring a bad mindset in your life. They are like vampires. They suck your energy away. So what I tell my friends and other men is, if you have a bad girlfriend, a bad friend, a bad relative, cut them out of your life. It's not worth it. They suck the energy out of the room. They depress you. So that's my advice in general to everybody. Don't hang around with people you don't like just because of some nostalgia or something like that. It's going to ruin your life in the long term. It's not worth it.
Great advice. Pete, thank you so much for taking the time today. Again, I appreciate all the viewers on the Keith Knight Don't Tread on Anyone channel. I hope to do some more videos soon on the most dangerous superstition. Again, you got to follow Pete's work. He does a lot of great stuff. And this Roy Moore stuff he did yesterday was killing me. Follow him at The Great Work 3 on Twitter. His YouTube channel is The Great Work. I already have the link below in this description. Take care, Pete. Thank you for your time.
Yes, thank you too. That was awesome. Great conversation. Let's do it again sometime.